Hello, this is the lesson for Ancient and Medieval History for Friday, the 1st of October, 2021. First, remember to be signed in. You've got to sign in to the school system and accept or acknowledge that you are present. If you don't do that, then you don't count as having watched this video. So make sure that you are signed into the school system as being present to watch these videos and take part in your other classes' lessons as well. Number two, after this video, I expect each of you to, in the public comments section, under where this is placed in Google Stream, offer a paragraph or three about the subject that I'm talking about. You can react to it, you can ask and answer questions about it, but it's got to be a thought worth expressing, an idea worth expressing, say something of value, and make it thoughtful. Now, what you may do is you may find that other people's comments are also something that's worth commenting upon. So you can watch the video. I expect you to watch every moment of this and listen to it and think about it and take notes, because you're going to be expected to know, and I'm not going to really cover this stuff any other time than this. But you can answer other people's comments or agree or disagree with them, have a discussion. Just have it be school appropriate. So what we have been working on is the topic of creation myths. And we've just finished the Zoroastrian myth, the two stories from Genesis, the Talmudic story that involves the rebellion of Lilith, and the two Islamic myths that deal with the way God makes man and the proper response to God, which should be humility and gratitude. Now we go further. You should be reading along with me with your notepad at home, Myth 6, the Babylonian myth of creation, which deals with, well, you'll see. Note, in the account of creation in Genesis, God makes the world for humankind. They wanted to say mankind, but they're being politically correct. In the Babylonian story, the gods make humankind to work for them. So here we go. In the beginning, there was Apsu, the sky god, and Tiamat, the chaos goddess. From their union came all gods. These younger gods grew restless and chose Marduk as their champion. It is he, Marduk, who finished the work of creation by slaying Tiamat, his mother, and Kingu, her lover. So we've already had several characters introduced. Apsu, the sky god, Tiamat, the chaos goddess. They give birth to the gods. The gods are restless. Marduk says, I'm going to finish the work of creation by slaying my mom, Tiamat, and her lover, who is not my father, Kingu. This is almost comic book-like. What's next? Then joined issue Tiamat and Marduk, wisest of gods. They strove in single combat, locked in battle. The Lord spread out his net to enfold her, the evil wind which follows behind. He let loose in her face. When Tiamat opened her mouth to consume him, he drove the evil wind that she could not close her lips. As the fierce winds charged her belly, her body was distended and her mouth was wide open. He released the arrow, and it tore her belly. It cut through her insides, splitting her heart. Having thus subdued her, he extinguished her life. He cast down her carcass to stand upon it. Okay. So they battle. Marduk in the form of like a heroic man. Tiamat in the form of a giant dragon. In Dungeons and Dragons, Tiamat has many heads. She's like a dragon hydra, lord of hell. Scary big baddie. But as they're fighting, Marduk manages to get a hold of Tiamat enough to drive the evil wind and into her. Now, I've got to admit, and this is going to be uncouth, but this is an ancient myth that deals with life. Could the evil wind be what happens when you have indigestion and gas must evacuate from parts of the body other than your mouth? It is possible. But whether it is the evil wind of flatulence or the evil wind of the soul or his power, Marduk forces her to ingest the evil wind, to inhale the evil wind, and it causes her to swell, and he shoots her with an arrow. Next. After he had slain Tiamat, the leader, her band was shattered, her troop broken up, and the gods, her helpers who marched at her side, trembling with terror, turned their backs about in order to save their lives. Tightly encircled, they could not escape. Marduk made them captives, and he smashed their weapons. Thrown into the net, they found themselves ensnared. Placed in cells, they were filled with wailing. Bearing his wrath, they were held imprisoned. So, the demons and evil spirits and devils and evil gods in Babylonian myths followed Tiamat in rebellion. And when Tiamat, their leader, was defeated by Marduk, Marduk and his allies then encircled, captured, and made prisoner and enslaved those evil powers. Now, some of them are locked away in their version of hell. Some of them are in the hidden places of the world waiting for somebody to be foolish enough to disturb them. So don't dig too deep when you're mining, because you may encounter their version of a Balrog, a demon under the earth that comes out because you were foolish enough to let it out. Okay, we go on. Now we're on the top of the second column on the right. The Lord trod on the lets of Tiamat. With his unsparing mace, he crushed her skull. When the arteries of her blood had severed, the north wind bore it to places undisclosed. They brought him gifts of homage, they to him. Then the Lord paused to view her dead body, that he might divide the monster and do artful works. He split her like a shellfish in two parts. Half of her he set up and sealed as sky, pulled down the bar, and posted guards. He bade them to allow not her waters to escape. So Marduk is creating a significant portion of the world that we understand with the corpse and the blood and the remnants of Tiamat's body. The top of her body becomes the sky, and it's holding back the waters that are beyond the sky. Elsewise, why is the sky blue? Genesis also refers to this, that the sky is a dome, and beyond the dome is more water because of the color. Marduk constructed stations for the great gods, fixing their astral likenesses as constellations. He determined the year by designating the zones. He set up 3 constellations for each of the 12 months. So Marduk organizes the heavens. And in Babylonian belief, the constellations are very important. They can help you understand. They can help you soothsay, that sort of thing. When Marduk hears the word of the gods, his heart prompts him to do artful works. Opening his mouth, he addressed Yah, God of waters. Blood I will mass and cause bones to be. I will establish a savage. Man shall be his name. Truly savage man I will create. He shall be charged with the service of the gods, that they might be at ease. So Marduk, after establishing the places of the various gods in the heavens and their relationships to their constellations, makes human beings. But our purpose is clear. It is to obey and serve the gods. So our species is created to serve another's end. We are not, in Babylonian myths, ends unto ourselves, at least not created to be. We are created to be the servants of the gods. Last paragraph. It was Kingu who contrived the uprising and made Tiamat rebel and joined battle. They bound Kingu, holding him before Ea. They imposed on him his guilt and severed his blood vessels. Out of his blood they fashioned mankind. So we are fashioned out of the blood of the rebellious lover of Tiamat, Kingu, according to this myth. Out of his blood they fashioned mankind. Ea imposed the service and let free the gods. After Ea the wise had created mankind, had imposed upon it the service of the gods. So, what I would have you know of the Babylonian creation myth is that, first of all, the universe in the person of the gods was created for its own purposes, not us. The Babylonians believed that the universe and the gods that make it and make it up were born for their own destinies, not necessarily to serve us. Quite the contrary, that we were created to serve them, and that's the second thing. So the universe is made for its own purposes, not ours. The second thing is that we were created to serve the gods. That's our purpose. We then go off mission, but that's another story entirely. That gets us to the Babylonian version of the Noah flood story, the Gilgamesh story. And I guess the third thing that's worth noting is that our universe is a product of conflict, of the battle, like battles between Marduk and Tiamat, between the good gods and powers that follow Marduk and Tiamat's followers led by her lover Kingu. And that the product of these conflicts, among other things, is us, the sky, our lives. And by the way, the guardians that Marduk put on the ceiling of the sky to keep the water out fail occasionally, so we have rain from time to time. But they lived in a fairly arid part of the world. Not much rain, mostly irrigation. So that's the Babylonian myth. We now go to myths 7, 8, and 9, which are among the most confusing of the myths that we deal with. Now, they're all from the Indian religion Hinduism in Asia. The first myth comes from the Manusmriti, which is an early version of Hindu scripture. The second comes from the Rig Veda, which is a period in Hinduism where there are a lot of new ideas, reform ideas. The third myth comes from the Chandra Goya Upanishad, which were, again, a new era of understanding within Hinduism. So we have the same religion, but with three different eras. And these different eras have different understandings about the origin of things. A lot of it is fairly difficult to suss out. Maybe it's the translation, or maybe it's the fact that just the concepts are so different from the ones that we are used to dealing with in the Middle East and in the West. So I'm going to go through these fairly quickly, even though it's quick, or even though they're complicated. Anyway, please follow along. It'll help you to hold this stuff in your mind enough to try to make sense of it, which is what the point is. Remember, creation myths are not about how the world was created. They're about why things are the way they are. why our lives are the way they are, what we're for, what life is for, and all of that. So the first Hindu myth in this selection from the Manu Smriti, chapters 5 through 16. This universe existed in the shape of darkness, unperceived, destitute of distinctive marks, unattainable by reasoning, unknowable, wholly immersed, as it were, in deep sleep. Then, the divine self-existent, himself indiscernible, but making all this, the great elements, and the rest discernible, appeared with irresistible creative power, dispelling the darkness. Then something happened. Now, indiscernible means you can't detect it with your senses. But then somebody, a being, a power, comes along and banishes some of the darkness with his acts to make things discernible, visible, detectable. He who can be perceived by the internal organ alone, which is subtle, indiscernible, and eternal, who controls all created beings and is inconceivable, shown forth of his own will. Boy, that's complicated. Let me try to make sense of it. He who is discernible by the internal organ alone is he who can only be detected through the mind. There are things that exist that you can't see, smell, taste, touch, or feel. Things that often are called of the spirit. So the mind, the soul, the heart, that internal wondering part of us, can discern, detect, and perceive the presence of a God in a way that our bodies with their sensory organs cannot. He, desiring to produce beings of many kinds from his own body, first with a thought, created the waters and placed his seed in them. That seed became a golden egg in brilliancy equal to the sun. In that egg, he himself was born as Brahma, the progenitor of the whole world. So, the power that creates something other than darkness, which is perceivable by the internal organ alone, then fertilizes the waters, which creates an egg, and then he inhabits the egg and is born into his creation. So instead of being outside of creation, simply making it, Brahma, the chiefest of the Hindu gods, becomes born within the universe of matter. So he is both within the universe of matter and beyond the universe of matter. Confused yet? If you're not, you will be. The waters are called Nara, for the waters are indeed the offspring of Nara. As they were his first residents, Avara, he thence is named Narayana, in other words, from the water. From that first cause, which is indiscernible, eternal, and both real and unreal, confusing, was produced that male, Purusa, who is formed in this world under the appellation of Brahma. The Divine One resided in that egg during a whole year, indeterminate amount of time. Full life cycle. Then he himself, by his thought alone, divided it into two halves, opened the egg. And out of those two halves he formed the heaven and the earth. Between them, the middle sphere, the eight points of the horizon, and the eternal abode of the waters. So, imagine Brahma breaks the egg open, and the top of the egg is the sky, and the bottom of the egg is the earth, and the layer of the egg at the top of the bottom of the earth. Boy, that's confusing. The bottom part of the egg is filled with the earth and has a surface, and we live on the surface, the 8 points of the horizon, and so forth. So we live on the surface of the earth, right near the middle of portion of the remnants of the two eggs that Brahma was born in. And out of these two halves he formed the heaven and the earth. Between them, From himself he also drew forth the mind, which is both real and unreal. Likewise, from the mind, egoism, sense of self, which possesses the function of self-consciousness and is lordly. So the mind is both real and unreal, and even modern science has to deal with this. Our thoughts, our self-consciousness, is more than the sum of the parts of our brain. Our brain may be the physical basis, but our mind is more than the physical matter of our brain. It is the electromagnetic impulses that form our personality from moment to moment, that help us to remember things and plan and predict things and have a sense of who we are and who others are, and all that's consciousness stuff. It's both real and unreal, and it's created by Brahma. And that sense of self, which is egotism, gives us the sense that we're here, that we exist, and that egoism gives us a sense that we can be in control, at least of our own lives, to an extent. Moreover, the Great One, the soul, and all products affected by the three qualities, and in their order, the 5 organs which perceive the objects of sensation. Here they talk about the mind and sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. 5 organs of sense. But joining minute particles, even those 6, which possess measureless power with particles of himself, he created all beings. So, Brahma infuses all living beings with his life. And that's the basis for the immortal soul in Hinduism. And the truth of every person is they are an immortal soul. They put on a body and take it off as if we put on and take off our daily clothing. That immortal soul is of Brahma. It is of the divine. It is his gift to us, the gift of consciousness, of life, of self-awareness. Okay, I'm going to skip the details of the second and third Hindu myth to simply summarize what I get from them, because they are even more complicated, especially the second one. The first myth asserts that Brahma, in proto-Brahman form, creates the world, that there is a creator. The second myth, in so many words, says, we don't know. We don't know that creation came because there was a creator. There may have been no creator. There may have been an event that happened that spontaneously create life. We have an existential doubt about the beginning of things. We can talk about the world that we know. We can postulate, guess, imagine things, but we have an existential doubt. We do not understand. And therefore, to assert that there may be a creator or that there is a creator is not necessarily rooting yourself in truth. The third myth, which is an answer to the first two. First myth says there is a creator, it's Brahma. Second myth casts doubt on all of that. Remember, a different era of Hinduism. The Upanishad myth from the third myth says, well, maybe there was a creator, or maybe not. We don't know, but that's okay. We can root ourselves in what we know, and we can consider what we don't know with our imaginations, but it's okay. In essence, what I want you to remember from all this Hindu stuff, which I acknowledge to my Western sensibilities and my limited understanding is a bit befuddling, is that these 3 myths are engaged in a conversation with one another, in a volley back and forth. There was a creator, it's Brahman. His spirit is in all of us. First myth. Second myth. Oh, really? We're not sure of that. Doubt. Be humble. And then the third myth says, well, maybe not, but it's okay. It's not a subject of doubt that can harm you. It's okay that we doubt. It's okay that we don't know everything. After all, we're not gods. So that's what I would have you know about that. Now we go to the Chinese and Taoist myths, which is, I think, where, well, we'll see. We'll see how long we go. I'm going to take a little drink. There are 5 great civilization areas that spread across Eurasia, where the world's first known civilizations come from. The oldest is in Mesopotamia and the Near East. You got Mesopotamia, then you've got Egypt, then you've got China. I guess from your perspective, Mesopotamia, Egypt, China. Then you have India, and finally you have Europe. So China, like Europe, is at the end of this continuum. China, like Europe, is more self-generated, whereas the Indians and the Middle Easterners, including the Egyptians, have some original ideas, and they derive some ideas from the other civilizations around them which they know. But both Europe and China tend to be prime civilizations, not derivative. Most of the West is self-invented or inherited and reinterpreted, and much of China is self-invented as well, although they do have influences from India, especially from time to time. This Chinese myth also is very characteristic because the Chinese, well, you'll see. We'll talk about it afterwards. So we're on myth 10, Chinese. Please read along with me. Before heaven and earth had taken form, all was vague and amorphous. Therefore, it was called the Great Beginning. The Great Beginning produced emptiness, and emptiness produced the universe. The universe produced material force which had limits. That which was clear and light drifted up to become heaven, while that which was heavy and turbid solidified to become earth. It was easy for the pure fine material to come together in heaven, but extremely difficult for the heavy turbid material to solidify. Therefore, heaven was completed first, and the earth assumed shape thereafter. The combined essences of heaven and earth become the yin and the yang. The concentrated essences of the yin and the yang became the four seasons, and the scattered essences of the four seasons became the myriad creatures of this world. After a long time, the hot force of the accumulated yang produced fire, and the essence of that force became the sun. The cold force of the accumulated yin became water, and the essence of the water force became the moon. The essence of the excess forces of the sun and the moon became stars and planets. Heaven received the sun, moons, and stars, while earth received water and soil. I went through that quick. I'm going to hit the points more purposefully now. Before heaven and earth had taken form, all was vague and amorphous. That does not assume emptiness. Imagine instead a cosmic soup, like thick pea soup. And thick pea soup is sort of blobby. That's the universe. Everything in the universe that will come from the universe when it's made exists in protoform in this cosmic soup. So there it is. And then, amongst this cloggy existence, an empty spot appears. And then soon, other empty spots begin to appear, bubble up. And the creation of these empty spots, which seems to be spontaneous, begins to cause pressure, which causes the light to rise and the heavy to fall. It is the opposite of most of the myths we've learned so far, because most of the myths we've learned so far say that the universe was created out of nothing, that the universe was created from the absence of light and matter and everything else. In Chinese myth, there was all of this stuff roiling around as a proto-cosmic soup, and then bubble of emptiness and other bubbles of emptiness, and those bubble of empties are what causes creation. So it's actually the arrival of nothing in that bubble of emptiness form which provokes the universe into creation. Another difference is you do not see a personified God involved in this. Instead, the universe, the natural world, creates itself. Cosmic soup, bubbles of emptiness, heavy, light separation. And then from yin and yang, from the heavy and light separation, come the masculine and feminine forces come the sky and the earth, come fire and water, come the sun and the moon, and the four seasons, and from the four seasons come us. It is a creation myth that does not rely on a personality, the personality of a deity, the personality of a god. This is important. Classical Chinese civilization, the civilization that the communists have been trying to murder since 1948, actually since before that, classical Chinese civilization is not organized around a religion. India is organized around Hinduism. The Middle East today is organized around Islam. Back in the day, it was organized around Zoroastrianism. In the West, Christianity is the organizing principle of our Western civilization. But unlike all of those, Chinese civilization is not organized from the basis of a religious idea. It is organized from a variety of mystical ideas, but it's not theocentric. It's not God-centric. It has a different attitude, somewhat similar to the pagans of the Greek and Roman world, who viewed the powers of the natural world with wonder and fear, but with less reverence than a monotheist views God. Yeah, that's a mouthful. Now we come to Taoism. This is myth 11. The influences in Chinese culture and civilization include Taoism, which is mysticism, which is an intuitive rather than intellectual approach to wondering about the nature of things. Intuition, creativity, visioning, rather than received scripture and religious law. China also has Buddhist influences that come from India. And China traditionally also has influences from magic and geomancy. What the Chinese call feng shui is geomancy, earth magic. And the ideas of Chinese magic have to do with tapping the elemental powers of lightning or of water or of fire or whatever. Even Chinese food is supposed to be a balanced mixture of various cosmic elemental forces because there is a magic in food. The distinction that we make between food for eating and medicine for treating injuries is a blend in classical Chinese culture. So, because Taoism is mystical, what you're going to get here is a very different message about the nature of this creation that we live in. Read along with me, Myth 11, Taoism, from the Tao Te Ching. Yeah, it's spelled Taoism, it's pronounced Taoism. Existence is beyond the power of words to define. Terms may be used, but are none of them absolute. In the beginning of heaven and earth, there were no words. Words came out of the womb of matter. And whether a man dispassionately sees to the core of life, or passionately sees the surface, the core and the surface are essentially the same. Only words make them seem different, only to express appearance. If a name be needed, wonder names them both. From wonder into wonder, existence opens. We, according to the Taoists, get hung up with conscious intellectualism, with the world of our minds. And as such, in the world of our minds, we feel the need to name everything. Think about the power of names in Genesis. God makes the world with a word. God makes Adam the namer of creatures, the shaper of their souls. When Moses asks God for his name, he gives a use name, I am who am, rather than an actual proper name, because names are so important, and words are so important to the Hebrew idea of God. This is true of Christianity and Islam also, and it's a matter of debate among the Hindus. In China, in Taoism, in Chinese mysticism, they say that the universe is. You don't need words to describe it. You don't need a conscious mind to think on it. If a bear goes to the bathroom in the woods, he goes, whether somebody sees him or not. In the scientific experiment of Schrodinger's cat goes into the box. There's a vial of poison in the box, according to this. I think it's a sick idea myself, because I like cats. If the cat takes the poison, which is a stupid thing for a cat to do, is the cat dead when he takes the poison? Or is the cat dead only when somebody observes his death, opens the box and sees him dead? Oddly enough, that is a question that consumes modern physics. Is reality reality when it's not observed by a person? This gets into various ideas of quantum mechanics, the behavior of subatomic particles, which defies time, which defies reason. Effect precedes cause. What's that? Words, according to Taoism, are a distraction. The reality is, and it is without any need for names or words or terms or descriptions or any of that. In other words, our conscious minds are not the key to creation. Exactly. Our conscious minds are not the things that make creation happen. They can appreciate it, but they don't make it. Now we come to the dispassionate mind looking to the core of life, or the passionate one reading the surface. What I always picture here is a scientist at a microscope, coldly trying to plumb the depths of understanding of whatever it is he's looking through at through his microscope at. That is dispassionately trying to see to the heart of life. And that's one form of focus and wonder. The other guy, the one passionately on the surface, that's a surfer. That's a surfer riding a gnarly wave, dude. And that surfer, in riding that gnarly wave, is also experiencing wonder. Wow! This is so fun. This is so amazing, this dance of balance that I'm doing. Taoism says that those two things are basically the same. They're both good, well-lived lives at those moments, because in those moments, the individual is experiencing and inviting a sense of wonder. Now, wonder is the one thing that every child has, unless they've experienced true horror and trauma. Wonder is this sense of innate curiosity and oh, what's this? What's that? Wow! That sense of wow! You know what happens when you're a teenager? You probably do, because you're teenagers. We hide that sense of wonder. We squelch it. We mask it. Because only a doofus is going to go around going, wow, gee whiz, it's very uncool. And adults, unfortunately, inherit the teenage habit of hiding wonder, of rejecting it, because it makes you look goofy. But wonder, according to the mystics, a sense of genuine wow about the world, about that moment where the scientist discovers something, a new idea, a new connection, a new microbe, whatever, or where the surfer is experiencing moment by moment the thrill of balance, that the wonder in both of those moments is what makes life worth living. Don't worry about the words. Don't worry about the logic. Experience wonder. Don't squelch it. Don't kill it in yourself. Cultivate it. Because it's what gives life its spark. It's what really makes us alive. When we come back, we're going to start with the Japanese. Again, make comments in the public section, right in the stream, under where this video is listed. I hope you all have a good weekend. God bless. Take care. And maybe I'll find the button that I need.